Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to this session on smart material choices of this Fashion CEO Agenda Policy Gaps and Opportunities event. As you can see, we have a really exciting panel this afternoon of both business people and policymakers. I'm Lars Mortensen, I'm from the European Environment Agency, and I'll be your chair for this session. Please feel free to use the chat and for the comments and the Q&A for questions to our speakers. And this is at the right side of your screen. Our first speaker will be Claire Bergkamp from Textiles Exchange. She's not here with us, but she has a recorded message to use, which we will share with you in a few seconds. She will set the scene for our discussion, and her colleague Gill will be joining us for the Q&A. So over to the recording and let's get started.
Hello, my name is Claire Bergkamp and I'm the COO of Textile Exchange. Textile Exchange is a global nonprofit and we have over 500 members. We work around the world linking brands, retailers, suppliers, and farmers. We focus on fibers and materials, and more specifically on carbon reduction, soil health, water, and biodiversity, as a part of our holistic approach to drive positive impact for the entire industry. And it is our pleasure to be a part of this event as the Global Fashion Agenda's impact partner in the area of smart material choices. Smart material choices in our industry will require us to transform the systems that we rely on to produce our materials and garments at scale. We have less than 10 years to action this transformation, and we know that policy is going to play a critical part in enabling this change. We need policy to incentivize positive actions that lead to reductions in impact on the ground. Creating an enabling environment and removing barriers is going to be absolutely crucial for this change. At Textile Exchange, we started an initiative a couple of years back in the US called the Preferential Tariffs Project, with the aim of getting tariffs removed on lower impact materials, materials that can be proven to be recycled, organic, or responsible. We think this same thinking can be applied to many areas. We believe that it is necessary to reward and incentivize positive actions. Policy can help level the playing field and drive actions that encourage the adoption of lower impact material sources at scale. It is equally important that the industry and policymakers acknowledge the complexity of the issues at hand. The raw materials level in final textile and footwear products is comprised of dozens of industries, such as agriculture, oil and gas, mining, recycling, animal husbandry, forestry, and others. To drive impact reduction at the raw material level, it is critical that improvements in performance are incentivized within a specific material type, rather than creating a system that would encourage or allow one material claim to be compared to another. For example, comparing cotton to polyester. Consumers might assume that comparative claims between materials of different types are based on a holistic view of impact and are able to take into consideration trade-offs. However, available LCAs are not able to adequately capture the diverse production systems that make up material supply chains, nor are they able to provide a holistic view, which is needed if we want to focus actions where they are needed without creating negative unintended consequences. Additionally, we need to be creating systems that help focus action where it counts. We do not want to be creating distractions. We need to focus on reductions within a specific material category if we expect to achieve the change, that we know we need to start actioning now. Comparison between material types could also lead to unnecessary and distracting conflicts between industries if they encourage consumers to opt for one material type over another without taking a holistic view. We feel that the most positive outcome would be policy that incentivizes each industry to improve their practices and impacts, rather than having to defend comparisons against perceived competitor materials. Again, it is all about keeping the focus on actions that truly drive impact reduction. We also urge policymakers to encourage systems that reward on-the-ground verification. We believe that this is the strongest way to ensure that the market is incentivizing positive impacts, or at the very least, creating a system that helps us to avoid having negative impacts on the ground. Certifications and standards offer a valuable and already available tool for this. As Textile Exchange, we are a member of ICL, as are many other material certification holders. As such, we are required to prove that our standards lead to positive outcomes on the ground. Certifications provide a direct way for companies to translate and communicate to the marketplace verified sustainability claims on materials. To close, let me say that we are invigorated by the discussions happening right now around the world with policymakers. We think that this is the moment where we can actually make a change. We want to encourage the industry and policymakers to stay focused on changes that lead to direct outcomes on the ground. But we feel like this is the moment for us to have that meaningful conversation and create that meaningful change that enables us to stay within our planetary boundaries. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Claire. It almost felt like she was with us. So, but thanks to Textile Exchange, and I think there was a really important point made on the materials instead of between the materials. I think it was important. So with that, I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, which is my very good colleague Paola Migliorini from European Commission, DG Environment. Paola, the word is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Lars. Very happy to be here and basically to focus and give you the latest on what it is in preparation and has been announced already to support the sector in the transitions. As you know, we have announced a textile strategy for this year, for the end of the year. And I'm happy to give you a little bit more information since we just launched an open public consultation so we can gather additional input. But what is important for me to convey in this afternoon is some of the ideas that we want to put into this strategy. So we want to basically sketch the needs and the challenges of the sectors to become circular and digital. And we want to assess what has been done so far. And so this would include, listing the measures that are already foreseen. And I'm thinking about, for example, all the legal obligations for separate collections that is coming in a couple of years, and other measures, some of the supports that is already foreseen for research and innovation, for example, but at the same time sketching some of the tools that we are putting forward to address the challenges that I was indicating. And what are these? They are linked to the main aim of the initiatives, as I said, to make sustainable textiles the norm. This is really linked to another measures that we can develop maybe further in the Q&A, the Sustainable Products Initiative. So as we want to make sustainable products the norm, this also applies to textiles. So we will provide actions or information on how we plan to do so. We also want to foster the environmental excellence through the eco-label or the green public procurement practices, so addressing consumptions and actually addressing even overconsumption of textiles by increasing the consumer awareness of the impacts of their consumptions. So we also want to empower them to choose the sustainable options, and then to make use or to support the development of circular business models. Some already exist, some might be developed further. And again, these measures matches the production and the consumptions aspects of the circular economy, as you know. At the same time, we want to boost, as I said, with the business models, the reuse and repair, at the same time supporting improved recycling of textiles through techniques, the innovations, again, some manufacturing processes, but also through partnering also with local and national authorities to improve the separate collections, or to allow the appropriate separate collections of textiles that is, as I said, is coming up in 2025, end of 2024. Together with this, the strategy will also sketch the solutions that are made available through the efforts for the recovery. Because of course we know that the sector has been hit hard by the COVID pandemic, both from the supply side and the consumption. So also we will use the strategy or the strategic framework to provide more solutions or greater supports through the recovery funds that we are making available. So big efforts on several angles. Again, we're very clear in mind the aim that it is to make sustainable textile products the norm. I would leave it here, Lars, and then leave for time for questions afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Paola, for this very quick overview. I think all of us are very excited about the textile strategy coming, and what you said, you want to make sustainable textiles the norm is a really good message. I like that a lot. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Baptiste Carriere-Pradal, who is chair of the Policy Hub. So please share with us, Baptiste, what you think should be done.
Thank you, Lars. Just one, I cannot hear anything you say, so I can just see on your lips when you finish talking. So just one quick note. So I hope that you can all hear me. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Baptiste Carriere-Pradal. I'm the chair of the Policy Hub. So many of the participants in the Policy Hub have been speaking here today. So since 2 years after the impulsion of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, the Global Fashion Agenda, and the Federation of the European Sporting Goods Industries, we have been wanting to interact a lot with policymakers, clearly having the idea that it's only by having smart regulation that we'll be able to turn this industry to a circular one. So therefore, we've been thrilled to be joined lately by Textile Exchange and Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemical, which are therefore uniting to really be able to harness all of the knowledge of the industry to a more circular one. So these being said, when it comes to smart material choices, one clear idea to keep in mind is that a smart material choice is only a brink towards a more sustainable product. While Paola Migliorini mentioned is that if the idea is to make sustainable product the norm, then we have to look indeed about how we can select the proper material to make the the products themselves more sustainable. But to echo also a bit what Claire was saying, it's rather complicated to identify which product is sustainable versus another one, because there is a key piece that is key is always when you think about a product or material, you need to think about the use that the product will be undergoing. So hence, when you calculate the footprint or what you want to know about the performance of a material, you always need to attach it towards the use case, the durability, and all of the much more holistic perspective from an impact perspective and from a life cycle analysis that you need to integrate to have the vision about the overall impact that the product will bear. And if you want to know about this impact, since all of the different calls that we have heard so far, always a term about knowing your impact comes back. And with all of the members of the organization participating in the Policy Hub, we really came to the conclusion that we can only talk properly about impact and help drive the industry to have a better and reduced impact if two conditions are met. The first one is definitely we need to have a common methodology. We really believe that it's only by having one common method to calculate the footprint of a given product that we can all together agree on, therefore, the different levies that we can pull to reduce the impact of this product. To this end, we've been very happy, and many of the members and participants of the Hub have been working since nearly 10 years in the work led by the Directorate General to Environment into creating the EU PEF, the Product Environmental Footprint, an effort in which you have brands, retailers, NGOs like EEB, fibers association like the Wool Association, the Cotton One, the Leather, that are all coming together to define the best way to measure environmental performance of the product. The solution is not yet perfect. Again, we know and we agree that there is some limitation in FCA. But now is the time to still move forward. Now we have more than 16 impact categories that we can calculate, and let's leverage this one to be able to move forward. And then in place of this methodology, we need to be able to find a common database to be able to feed into this method. We don't think that one of the current existing databases has all of the answer or should become the norm, but we do believe that it's by public and private sector coming all together to create one common database that then we will be able to have a very robust and solid system, all answering clear quality requirements agreed by the Commission. Some of them are already laid down to be able to feed into this method and to have the overall impact. I think I'm already past my 4 minutes, Lars.
Yes, a little bit, but that's fine. Thank you, Baptiste, especially for highlighting the focus on the use, and the holistic perspective, and also the need for a common methodology, which is really important. So with that, I move on to our next speaker, which is Nellie Lindeborg from H&M. Look forward to hearing from your brand on what you think is needed. So please, the word is yours.
Thank you, Lars, and thank you, GFA. Opportunity. And H&M Group, we truly welcome sustainable product textile industry. Circular economies is the right tool to support businesses and the EU climate goals. And they're very much aligned with our sustainable vision, to become climate positive by 2040 in our entire value chain, as well as becoming 100% circular. So we are also committed to empowering our customers through trustworthy and clear information. And when we believe that that our EU textile strategy is the right approach to drive a circular economy in our industry, and defining one common legal and implementation scheme. And since 2013, H&M Group is participating in the development of the Apparel and Footwear PEF methodology. So this leads me into some of or three of our group's policy asks and needs. The first one being that the measurement of the material impacts needs for one common methodology, as you also clearly mentioned, Baptiste. And the material impacts needs to aspire to capture both climate and circularity, as well as animal welfare and biodiversity. So for example, including design for circular. It's an echo now, sorry. Maybe you can mute.
Baptiste, can you mute yourself, please? You did that.
So including design for circularity, so that disassembly and recyclability are taken in consideration. So securing alignment between these policies and our industry initiative will allow for us to develop one harmonized baseline regarding data and methodology to drive true systematic change. And we believe that the policy initiatives such as the Sustainable Product Initiative and the EU Textile Strategy driven by EU Commission at various levels could drive positive change, taking into account the following principles. So the one is ensuring one common and consolidated transparency framework and approach for product, brand, and value chain, and considering both social and environmental dimension while empowering customers, creating comparability and building customers' trust, as well as building on the fashion industry experience, the research and all the testing campaigns, as well as the sectoral industry initiatives such as the HIG Index suite of tools to really drive our customers' sustainable choices. And moving on to the second one, an important enabler is really to create the right framework for innovations and scalability for these innovations. So to foster innovations at all stages of the product life cycle, like material choice, sorting, recycling technologies, transport, etc. And the product policy framework shall be flexible enough to adapt itself to the future innovations, which will influence the definition of sustainable products in the coming years. And last but not least, smart material choices will also depend on a secondary raw material market and material recirculation. And by having to produce much less primary resources, we will reduce our CO2 footprint. So important part here is to really keep the material in use as long as possible through fiber-to-fiber recycling models will be key, as well as new business models like rental and resell. And so, yeah, recirculation is key to limit our environmental impact of production as much as possible, as well as a valuable resource for new circular products. Prolonging the product life and material use can provide continuous access to fashion for customers while still staying within our planetary boundaries. So to summarize, I mean, from our group, we need one common methodology for measurements of material impacts and the right framework to foster innovation and scalability of these innovations, as well as for the smart material choices to connect with a strong secondary raw material market where materials recirculate. Then our group, H&M Group, will reach the vision to become circular and climate positive, and together with the partners in the textile industry, stay within our planetary boundaries and keeping the customer's trust, which is super important for us. So that's all from me, Lars, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nellie. Thank you for being so clear. You know, you ask for a common methodology like Baptiste did, but you also bring in another issue, which is the secondary raw materials markets, which is really, really important. So with that, I would like to move on to our last speaker, which is Krishna Manda from Lenzing. So Krishna, the word is yours. So look forward to hear your perspective on this and what you are asking for. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Lars and GFA, for this opportunity. And hello, everyone. I really enjoyed the points you have mentioned, which are very relevant. And I just wanted to briefly introduce Lenzing and also complement my part of thinking here. Lenzing is a wood-based cellulose fiber producer, which is a tier 4 manufacturer of the whole value chain. So if you look at, we are very, very far away from the brands and retailers. Lenzing is the first wood-based fiber producer to have a approved science-based target with a goal to become like 50% specific emission reduction by 2030, and also net zero by 2050. And we also have a goal to have 50% recycled content in our fibers by 2025. I wanted to mention these because these are part of the conversation we need to have to become scalable, sustainable materials. Right now, I want to jump on to the barriers. The first and foremost is if we try to understand how materials choices are being made in the industry, whether it's value chain partners or brands, it's based on parameters like functionality, cost, and quality, lead times, and supply security and sustainability. Yeah, and it is actually possible to compete against conventional materials for sustainable material producers on these parameters for except one. That is actually cost. When you talk to many companies in the whole value chain, everybody's expectation is sustainable materials should be cost neutral, which is actually the real problem, because I wanted to bring one example from our company. We are investing now $200 million in two facilities in our company in Asia. One is to transform one site from coal to completely natural gas, first site in whole Asia to produce viscose with natural gas energy, which is reducing our emissions by 200,000 tons, which is 50% of the facility's emissions. And the other site, we are actually transforming it into a EU eco-label compliant facility, which also costs something in that order. So we have to understand that sustainability costs money. It doesn't come actually free. Yeah, that is one thing. That is a market barrier. The second thing is actually, I don't want to discredit the fact that there are so many forward-looking companies which are actually going in this direction with us as being partners from the brands and retailers, but that is not enough to achieve the scale we are talking about here, right? So if we wanted to change systemic level, we need to change the levers. That's where the policymakers come. So I think we need to create this level playing field for sustainable and circular materials, which doesn't exist today because everything is treated as same in the market by the players and everybody. So if you take example, I would like to take, there is a Dutch company called Mud Jeans. They actually rent jeans and hoodies, and also they incorporate recycled content in their products. But the problem is the customers still have to pay the VAT, the value added tax on the recycled content, which already has paid VAT in its first life cycle. So we are actually not creating any incentive for consumer to buy this material, which is actually more expensive than the regular probably. Yeah. So we need to see how we as a legislation point of view or framework point of view, we are actually reducing those barriers. And the third one, which we all talked about, how do I communicate to my customer what is a sustainable material, right? So on what parameters? So there is no universally accepted definition or anything. So there is no methodology and there is no database which is going to support us in that. And because of these barriers, we are also not able to actually communicate to the value chain partners to buy sustainable materials sometimes. I have an example, but with time limitation, I would not go into that. But the most important thing is we need to change our perspective or the paradigm, how we use sustainability, the perception of the sustainability. So far, new products, new technologies, new materials are considered as innovations. But why not the existing materials with a substantial impact reduction? For example, if you can reduce your CO2 by 40 to 50%, why don't we consider that as innovation and really pay like we pay for new technologies and new products in the market? We don't have that kind of thinking in our heads. So I think we need to change as an industry to actually give right importance to the sustainability improvements. So I can contribute some concrete points, but I would like to give you floor, Lars.
A lot, Krishna. And really like you're saying about the sustainability costs money and the example of the double VAT. It's really important. So now we're on to the Q&A. So please go ahead and ask your questions. I can see there are questions already. What I'd like to do first is to bring in Ashley, and I would like to ask you, Ashley, in terms of the message about the focus on improving fibers. How do you think policymakers can ensure that there's a focus on improving fibers instead of comparing fibers, which was in the message we had?
Yes, thank you very much, Lars. And I appreciate everyone having Textile Exchange on. Claire is really sad to miss this part of the, this is the most fun part of these panels. Looking at focusing on improving fibers rather than comparing them, I think what Textile Exchange would like to see is for the tools that we are developing, the tools that we're using, for them to really look at the impacts of materials within categories and to incentivize practices like the use of recycled content, like the use of regenerative practices at the raw material level, and to really focus our tools on getting that kind of information into how we're measuring and how we are assessing the products. Textile Exchange really advocates setting up incentives that give those raw material producers really clear incentives and holistic targets to make impact reductions. If they're spending all their time defending the use of cotton against polyester, really they're going to focus on defending themselves rather than actually being incentivized to make those transitions. Krishna's example of using that recycled content, and also I think the financial investments that they've made at that facility is a prime example of if they are not incentivized to make those kinds of changes, to get those kinds of impact reductions, then ultimately we're not going to actually see the changes on the ground at the raw material level that we want to see. And so really highlighting positive changes, positive impact reductions within those material categories is really key to that. Claire also mentioned...
Thanks, Ashley. I think we have to move on to another question. Sure. So for Paola, there's one thing I would like to ask you. Can you say something about the link between the textile strategy you were talking about, the sustainable product and the sustainable product policy, and the footprint? And also perhaps just one word about how much will the textile strategy cover in terms of leather and so on? And if you can be quite quick, I know this is rather difficult, but we're running out of time. So yes, go ahead.
Well, the quickest is wait a few months and then you have all the answers. But no, honestly, it is in fact that I was saying that the main commonalities of the initiatives that you mentioned is somehow, apart from the aim, it's really the timing, because they are scheduled for the end of the year. We are in the process of doing these consultations on the textile strategy and on the sustainable product initiatives at the same time, and then really hands in hand. And why so? Because the main link is that you need to think that the textile strategy will be still a framework communication. We are not thinking of having specific measures in the textile strategy. And why so? Because we have gathered from stakeholders that there's a need for a framework, a document that pulls all the strings together, so then for the sectors to be a reference of what it is, what are the challenges, and what are the tools available. And then the sustainable products initiative that is going to come at the same time, basically towards the end of the year. So again, the timing is they might really come at the very same time of adoptions. We'll look into some of the requirements. For example, some requirements on materials will come with the Sustainable Product Initiative, some requirements for recycled content that are horizontal in general. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, you know that it all depends on the product and on the material. So as long as we come up with framework that are general and horizontals, you cannot come to the nitty-gritty of what the specific requirements will happen. So you need to wait for the sustainable product initiatives to be adopted and to set up a system like we have for the eco-design. So work program identifying textiles. So then we will define essential requirements for recycled content for a specific product, being it a t-shirt or, and I'm just really giving you examples. I don't take it for the preparatory work for that. But this is the mechanism you need to get used to. And then we will have those requirements as again for recycled content, for example, in the SPI. So somehow the Sustainable Product Initiative will be still a framework that will give indications on how we will implement what it has been asked. Some measures for harmonized measures and methods. I'm thinking about the methodologies that Baptiste was mentioning. that will come. It is also under development, and it will be a mix of what we have with the product environmental footprint, and we will use all the work. Of course, this is why we're developing it, the category rules, but also together, because not all the impacts are that might be relevant for the different products made of textiles will be addressed by the product environmental footprint method. So you might expect a combination, a methodology that combines the results of the PEFCRs and the pilot, the Apparel pilot, with others. And this is all something that we are developing together with the stakeholders. So I'm sorry, I wasn't very fast in replying, but again, it's a very complex. For every one of us working on this, we know how complex, but be assured that also for example, and allow me just to say a few words on this because I think it's very important. There's also the consumer part. So how do we communicate then all this information? So here comes the initiatives on the green claims, but not only, also the empowering consumer initiatives developed and also foreseen for the end of the year, developed in the context of the legislations for consumer law. So also there, we will indicate some provisions of minimum requirements of information that will make consumers capable of making sustainable, informed choices. So you have to see almost a panorama of 4 initiatives that are being developed hand in hand. Big bang at the end of the year. I hope that next year, the next Fashion CEO agenda, we will discuss, and you will be seeing the results of all this very joint work. So I also want to
thank you, Paola.
Yes.
Big bang by the end of the year. We're all looking forward to that in many ways. No, but thanks for explaining. This is really important. The organizers have given us a little extra time. It seems they find it as interesting as we do, so that's good. So we'll just continue a few more extra minutes. So Baptiste, there's a question to you about durability in the point, and I also wanted to ask you about basically, how do you see the link between industry initiatives in measuring, like the Higg index, and the policy initiatives on the measuring for footprint? How do those match?
They dance together. What's happening is that if you need to have something happening, you need first to leverage all of the immense knowledge that happened in the past. So it's very important that Paola just mentioned that now there is conversation about the PEF tackles certain categories, 16 of them. Some others are not tackled there yet. So therefore, it's very important that we can harness the knowledge and that all what's happening today can be used. For instance, when we develop the PEF, we are using the Higg product module, but not only this one, we are using also what the ADEME, the French Environmental Agency, has developed. We are using the former PEF of Decathlon and other brands that were developed. We are using very critical position papers from the wool industry and other players. And it's by putting all of that together that we can create these first methods. But then there is one thing is that doesn't stop at the method. Then what will be more key is that when you carry on the tango, then you come to the, I don't know if it's a boom, but the grand finale is after when you can help to spread all of that. It's one thing to have a method, is another thing to make sure the industry can leverage it. And here there will be a key part from Textile Exchange, SAC, and all of the other players to make sure that all of their members have access via all of the tools and resources they are developing so that they can deploy that within their value chain. So this is when other tools, such as the Higg, that has already communicated that they will be applying the PEF in the tool and will be conforming to it. And so that therefore, that's where they will be able to ensure that all of the members and all of the industry will be able to develop that. So it's a dance and it's not finished, and hopefully it will be for the best.
Thank you, Baptiste, for explaining this to us and the grand finale, as you call it. No, it's really important that you explain this in detail, how it works, because even for us experts, it's quite complicated. With that, I want to move on to Nellie. Basically, in such a, being such a big brand and being such a player, perhaps can you tell us something about what is actually for you to be able to implement and to scale these circular business models that enable the circularity and the secondary raw materials market to happen? It'll be interesting to hear that.
Yes, I think, yeah, great question. I think it's definitely needed a strong infrastructure behind it. to really facilitate collection of textile waste or resource, as we also want to, have a clear definition for textile waste to be a resource that we can actually use for our for recirculation, but also for the infrastructure to be there for sorting and and the recycling part, which is not there today. And that we are driving through our garment collecting initiatives ourselves and other partners. So we need a strong infrastructure there and support in the EU, but globally. And then, of course, the free movement as well of these textile resources as well, to be able to sort and prepare and move them around globally, as well as we are a very global company and selling globally. And also that we can, really build up and recycling capacity so that it's there and that it's a standardized way of sorting. And then we have fantastic innovations, material innovations in the market today that we can utilize and that we are also selling already now to our customers. In order to scale them up and to have that feasible, we really need these things to be in place so that we can actually scale them. So it's I think that's what I want to answer to you on that, Lars. You're on mute now, I think.
Thanks, Nellie. The free movement also that you mentioned is really important. I would like to move on to a question to Krishna, and I think I'd like to ask you more or less the same question, because you're also an enormous player, basically. What do you think is needed to enable you and others to scale the circular business models and move towards more circular materials?
I just want to echo actually Nellie some of the points which she covered. Just I want to say that without demand, we cannot actually move the capital in improving the facilities which we were talking about. So we need to create demand for sustainable materials, right? I would actually say all value chain partners have a role, not only just brands and retailers, but I think that's where actually the pull comes from the market. So we need to create more demand. But I think as we talked about, price is a big issue now. The cost neutrality is expectation. So again, we need to look into the policymakers to, again, is it possible to reduce VAT on these materials which have very low footprint or very low impact? If it's how can we actually move the taxation from renewable to fossil resources? Because there is one example I want to say. In one facility, we wanted to move to natural gas, but their natural gas is 3 times expensive than coal, and we can't actually do that in that market environment. And if we do it, we will be at disadvantage against our competition in the market, and nobody is going to actually pay for that. So despite all these barriers, we are moving ourselves with our own strategy and things. But the last and final one is that we don't have dedicated funding for technologies which are at the brink of commercialization. That means they are pilot scale proven and they're ready for a commercial scale, but you need 50, 70, 100 million euros because there is no market and there is no scalability yet. The big players like us cannot also invest in. So we need to have dedicated funds to scale the near commercially available technologies. And you like Horizon 2020, FP7, and those programs cater to the fundamental research, but we also need to look for programs that can cater to the technologies that are at the brink of commercial scale. Thanks, Lars.
Thanks a lot, Krishna, for being very clear on this, also on the need for financing. We are just towards the end, so if you can have a look at the questions, so all of you, see if there's something you can answer quickly. I'll try to summarize this. This is really difficult because there's been so many important things said today. I think I would like to say that I think what most of you have said is this really. You talked about the need for a regulated measurement approach, for common methodologies as really, really important. So that's one point. I think another point you've talked about is a framework and policy to support the innovation and the circular business models. You were talking about, enable the free movement, to also the funding, Krishna, and those parts, of course, the pricing as well. And then finally, I know this thing about the competitive secondary materials market, I think is really important. Those are just 3 things I brought out. There are other things, and Paola has also taken notes of this, and we will discussion. So that's really great. So I want to thank all of you for fantastic inputs and speeches and keeping to a time. I would like to thank for the comments that have come, and I would like to say that in just 5 minutes the next session will start. The next session is on efficient use of resources, so that will start in 5 minutes. So you have there's a 5-minute break. If anybody wishes to just stay on here for a few more minutes with Q&A, we'll be here for a few more minutes, and then we will log out. So thanks a lot for a really fantastic session. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lars and everyone.
Thank you, Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.